everybody to first presentation of our camp meeting. For those of you online, as you know, we're in Fiji this weekend. And we're hoping to do 8 presentations. Before we begin, there's been a slight change in our roster. So for us, it will be later this evening, the second presentation. We're going to have a local speaker do that presentation instead of Adultery. Yes. Okay. I think that's everything. Everybody here wants to welcome everybody online. We have a large group here. It's about maybe 50 members, I think. Having said all of that, let's open with a word of prayer. Holy God, we want to thank you that you might be with us to guide and direct us. We ask for a special blessing not only as we open this camp, but as we see evidence of the dispensation that we're living in all around us. The signs of the times are certainly being fulfilled. Even though things have not turned out in the way that we had thought, we thank you for taking care of us and guiding us step by step. In Jesus' name, amen. Over the last few camp meetings, I guess beginning around September time, so I think in order it would be South Africa.
Sorry, Parminder, your camera's off.
ICM. Oh. ICM. UK. France. And then the Caribbean. And Guadeloupe and Martinique. So these are the last few camp meetings that we've had. Oh, 1 second. Just a technical bit here. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. So over these one, two, three, over these six camp meetings, a new theme that has come up to help us better understand the Sunday law subject is what? What's the new theme that we have now introduced to better understand the Sunday law? Adultery. So I'm not suggesting that the focus of all of these camp meetings was this subject. But certainly, this is a subject that's been able to help us better understand how to explain the various waymarks that we call the Sunday law. So I've hoped that most of us, if not all of us, have watched at least several of these camp meetings. So that we can have a better understanding of how this symbol of adultery is now being used and employed. Does anybody want to make a comment or help us to move a little bit forward on this subject of adultery? For those online, we don't have a roving mic here, so when the congregation speaks, I'll repeat what they say. So why are we speaking about adultery? How is it helping us? Someone said something? So George said 2 steps. Anyone else? Because of its connection to Revelation 17. So you're all familiar with Revelation 17. And which verse would we go to? 3? Would you agree with 3? So if you go to Revelation 17, verse 3, we know that John has been taken into the future into a place that he calls the wilderness. So this wilderness appears to be a geographical place. That's the setting of the vision. And in this place called the wilderness, he sees various beings. He sees beasts, he sees a woman, and then he sees kings. But we all understand that this wilderness is not so much a place, but it's a time period. And how do we make that connection? How do we turn the wilderness from a place into a time? Or a period of time? Anybody remember? So this questioning isn't a movement question. This is an Adventist question. Someone said something? Oh, 1 second. Now? The 1260? Were you going to say something over here? Okay, so you're going to go into a description of the beast, which speaks about 3 phases. So we normally go to Revelation 12, because in Revelation 12, we have a description of a different person, a different woman, but this woman is being led into, or she runs into the wilderness. Speaks about a dragon. And it doesn't take many steps once you have done that, when you connected Revelation 17 and 12, to see that this wilderness place ends up being a time period. So we'll just finish this thought off. And we'll say we pick up the symbol wilderness. Which is the 1260. So for my translators asking me something, no, I don't think it is. So if you're an Adventist, they understand what the 1260 is. Times, time and dividing of time, 3.5 times. And we've developed that thought. And we've understood that the 3.5 times is half of the 7 times. And the reason why we have found that important is because we have understood that almost all the time prophecies that you find in the Bible are all subsets of the 25-20. And the reason why that becomes important so you can go from the 1260 to 3.5 times, which is half of the 7 times. And what we have taught is the 1260 is a symbol of the 25-20. I've used the word symbol, but we could say a representation. It becomes a representation of the 25-20. We know literally that the 1260 is a component of the 25-20. It's literally half of it. And none of that is new. All of that information was developed by the Millerites. So the reason why this becomes significant is because the 25-20 becomes a symbol of something. What would you say the 25-20 is symbolizing? So the scattering and someone's going to say the gathering. Someone gave another word, judgment. Restoration. So this would be the scattering and the gathering. So what we can see in Revelation 17 are historical events that are happening, but we want to try to understand the cause or the reason for those events. Why are they happening? So you said chastisement? Okay. Chastisement. Chastisement is just another word for judgment, if that's okay, yeah? Or punishment. So we'll put punishment here then as well. Someone said something over there? Thank you. Apostasy. Okay, so I'll correct the spelling for judgment later. So we have these two themes that are related to the 25-20. And what we're required to do is in any dispensation to understand what is happening based upon these themes. So we're in verse 3 of Revelation 17. And the symbol that's given there is a woman sitting on a beast. And why were we in Revelation 17? How did we get to verse 3? Anybody remember my question? So I spoke about a new theme that was introduced, which was adultery. And then I asked what verse would we go to, because someone said Revelation 17. And someone told me verse 3. So when we're in verse 3, we picked up the word wilderness. We just had a quick discussion on the 25:20. But I want to bring us back to my question. We're going to look for adultery. And we're looking at Revelation 17. Is verse 3 a good verse to go to? Is it the correct verse? Did someone say something over here? Something over here? Verse 2. Oh, someone did say something. So let's go to verse 2 instead. So in verse 2, speaks about kings of the earth. And it says these kings of the earth have committed fornication. And he mentions the pronoun of the woman in verse 2. There are people online who are writing on my whiteboard. Could they rub it off and not do that? I can't undo what you're doing. Thank you. So in verse 2, this woman is the same woman that's referred to in verse 1. And it says in verse 1 that this woman is a prostitute. So we took this model of men, powerful men, having an illicit relationship with a woman. You can notice a few things. First of all, the kings are in plural, so there's several of them. And it's a singular woman. So we can see some form of a sexual relationship that is not appropriate or not right. And it's this verse that has led us to use the theme or the concept of adultery to try to understand better what that relationship looks like. So, over the studies that we've done thus far, there's a problem. And who can tell us what the problem would be? Even if you haven't kept up with the studies, if you go to the Old Testament and look at the subject of relationship, and you see what's being described here, a problem confronts you. Anybody can remember? Sorry? Yeah, so it's connected to the word fornication. Lust. Someone said adultery. So the problem is that if you go into the Old Testament, if a man, whether they're single or married, has sex with a prostitute, so we'll say that the man is married. He sleeps with a prostitute. Is that considered adultery? Sorry? So she's outside of marriage. She's not married to him. He's married. And he has slept with this woman. So is that a model of adultery? So several people here have said yes, it's a form of adultery or it is considered adultery. But if you look at the rules of the Old Testament, the law, you actually see that it's not adultery. So who can you think a married man has slept with another woman and it's all considered okay, not a problem? Any names? Any names?
Yeah.
You got to speak a little bit louder. Okay. So any names of yes. a Bible story, Bible name, correct? Hosea. So what did Hosea do? So Hosea marries a prostitute, is that right? But he wasn't married before, and she wasn't. So that marriage is legitimate. It's just unconventional. Yes, but it's. I'm just trying to say it's that there's no adultery or anything wrong going there. How about Abraham? Yes. So Abraham's a married man, and he sleeps with another woman. And oh, so the wife told him to. So if your wife consents, it's okay. But you have to. I can't hear you until
if they have a pair, well, married man with another woman, they will both be killed to death in the Old Testament.
So someone here has said a married man sleeping with another woman, they'd be stoned to death. But you know, Abraham wasn't stoned by anybody. And anyone else that we can think of? Right? Jacob. So what did Jacob do that's wrong? Because he just has two wives, doesn't he? That's okay. I think much wrong with that. I'm just trying to find another the name of another one. David. So David slept with a married woman, and that's straight out adultery. So he was condemned for that. I guess only because he was king, he wasn't stoned, or she. Um, I'm going to go with Judah. Is it Judah that sleeps with a prostitute? Actually, it's actually his daughter-in-law, but she dresses up as a prostitute. It is Judah, I think. Yep. And so he's already married, and he's not condemned. So we know that whatever's going on in Revelation 17, according to the Old Testament, it's not illegal. Any questions on that? So that's about as far as we got in our studies over these various camp meetings. So we understand that what's happening in Revelation 17, verse 2, doesn't meet the criteria of adultery in the Old Testament. Because in the Old Testament, the relationship between men and women is asymmetrical or skewed. It's in favor of men and not women. And whatever we may think of that, the rights and wrongs of this inequality, we did a study at a camp meeting. One of the I can't remember which one it was. It's one of these recent ones. Yes, it was. It's in France. I think it was 22nd of November, and I introduced a subject. The term that's used today. It's called intergenerational wealth. And basically, what that is keeping wealth in a family. And I spoke about the reasons and the importance for that. Where's my pen's playing up? So intergenerational wealth, which means keeping it in the family. And if you have an agricultural society, it makes sense that you would keep the wealth funneled through the male side of your family, not the female side of your family. And as soon as you do that, you have that model. The consequences of that are all of these unequal laws that are going to spring up in your society. And that's one of the reasons why inequality continues to exist today. When you have family wealth, especially if it's land-based. If you have property. It's a real problem that still confronts us today. And that's one of the reasons why this movement, for quite some time now, has really encouraged, especially women, to become educated. Because for many of them, it's the only form of independent wealth that they can get. So the verse that we've gone to in the Old Testament, I think we're all familiar with that verse now. Exodus chapter 20, verse 14. And what's important about that verse is that adultery is shaped or formed around a woman. Where she begins to lose her personhood and takes on elements of being the property of somebody. So I think most of us understand all of those dynamics. Often at wedding ceremonies, you'll see it on full display in a ceremonial form about the ownership of the bride. So that pretty much exists all through the Old Testament, this issue. And we employed a rule here, which is the rule or the law of first mention. I think we're all familiar with that. The first time you see a word or a concept introduced into us in the scriptures, it has a significance, has a certain importance to it. In the New Testament, where's the first mention there? To remember. Someone said something? Good. It's in the book of Matthew. It's in the Sermon of the Mount. Sermon on the Mount. 527. Can you hear me now?
Yes, all good.
Okay, so you can hear me now.
Yep, can hear
Okay,
you.
I've just switched to my laptop audio. I switched that off. Okay, so that means the French is going to come onto the audio. I don't know how to fix that now if I don't have headphones. Yeah. I've been told it's going to be a problem. Um, I have another one, but they're in my room. Turn off iPad, Bluetooth, perhaps. Okay. Bluetooth is off. Approve. Single system. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay, so it's all good now?
yep,
Okay, we're back on track. So just wait for Curtis to tell me everything's okay.
yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, great.
Carry on.
So we go to Matthew 5:27. And in Matthew 5:27, first usage in the New Testament. And what's the first thing that we're going to notice? Who's Jesus speaking to now? Speaking to men. In 5:27, and you know he's talking to men because in verse 28, it says, who looks or desires a woman. So you know he's speaking to men. So now Jesus is going to turn adultery upside down and allow that men can now commit adultery. So if you remember, when you go to the Old Testament, and we demonstrated the law regarding adultery, what did we see? We saw that when it spoke about women, it spoke about married women, not single women. And when it spoke about men, it spoke about any men, whether they were married or single. It didn't matter. So in the Old Testament, the issue is about the marital status of the woman. So when you go to the New Testament now, in verse 28, what does it say regarding this woman? She married or single? Either one, it doesn't specify, which is the same rule that we used in the Old Testament. So that Jesus broadens the whole subject of adultery and now says it doesn't matter about the marital status of a woman. So there's a significant change that goes on there. So this is also the first mention in the New Testament. So who's summarized that for us? What have we learned? So let's begin in the Old Testament. What's the driver for this inequality? The objectification of a woman. So why does that happen? I'm not trying to say it's okay, but I'm saying it happens for a reason. Sorry? So because of sin, and you said the woman fell. So was God punishing women? Is that what you mean? So women tend to be looked down at. So why is that connected to sin? In Genesis 3, tell me the model that you have. So what ends up happening when we go down this path, you end up having a model where men end up always looking bad. Now, by all means, there are many bad men. We're not denying that. But there weren't a group of men that got together and said, let's create a society, let's form a plan that's going to oppress women. And I hope none of us think that God did anything like that. That God wanted to punish women in any way. So what I briefly tried to do is that if you describe the consequences of sin, what happened was that things were no longer free. If humans wanted anything, they now had to work for it. And once that change had happened, when you take into consideration just two simple elements of our humanity, the most important one is that only women are able to give birth. The second one that isn't really so important is that men tended to be bigger and physically stronger than women. But that's not the primary driver. The primary driver was that women have children. So there's that element. And then another one that's deeply embedded in our humanity. Sorry? So someone said culture. So what I'm going to say is I think of the verse, and I can't remember the verse now. Yes, in the book of Ephesians. So in the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, hoping this verse works, but I don't know if it's the eminent one. I think it is. Ephesians 5:28. So before we go to 5:28, there are two elements to our humanity that I think drove what today we call a patriarchal system or a patriarchal model. And both of these elements of our humanity were given to us. We didn't ask for them. One is that only women can have children. So I'll just put that in parenthesis. I call it our humanity. And there are two elements. Women have children. we'll put women give birth. And the second one, I'm going to say that we are selfish. I'm going to say we're inherently selfish. If you combine those two drivers, they will create a patriarchal system. And if you add in size and physical strength, that just makes things even worse. So if we're going to go downhill, it just makes us go downhill faster. The fact that men are bigger and stronger than women generally. But I want to suggest that's not the main driver. It's the two that I put on the board. So number one, you see in the book of Genesis easily. Speaks about the labor that women have. And the selfishness, Ephesians 5. In Ephesians 5, it doesn't quite say selfishness. What is it? How does it phrase it? It says, humans do what? What's the primary things that humans are, their characteristic or what they do? Correct? Pride? You're just guessing. You're not looking in the chapter, are you? It's not pride. So it's not relationships or marriage. Can't hear you. Love themselves. That's it. Humans love themselves. It does it in the framework of men, but it's a human condition. So once you combine those two elements, we're pretty much doomed. And most of your problems in your marriages the ones you had, I mean the marriages that you had, past tense, the marriages that you're currently in, and if you're young, the marriages that you're going to enter into. They're pretty much doomed. Just because of these two elements of our humanity. Women give birth and humans love themselves. And when you have those two elements, the relationship that we call marriage is doomed to fail. There really isn't much hope for success. Because what you're required to do is fight against your humanity. And you've got two choices as we close. Choice number one is, sorry, got to speak louder. No, if you're going to get married, obviously, if you don't get married, that's fine. But if you're going to get married, if you want to succeed, you've got two solutions. They're on the board. Number one is be selfless. Selflessness is against your human nature. You're not designed to be selfless. That's solution one. Solution two, contraception. Don't give birth. So if you're going to give birth, if you're going to have children, the secret of success is selflessness. If that's too hard to manage, don't have children. Both will lead to successful marriages. So we'll have a think about that as we until our next time together tomorrow. We're going to close in prayer. And just want to give everybody the time that we're going to begin our next study. Give me 1 second. So we're going to meet in about 10. Let's call it. We'll open a little bit late. We'll say in 20 minutes, at 10 minutes past the hour. So wherever you are located in the world, it will be 10 minutes past the hour. We'll start 10 minutes late. Let's close with prayer. Holy God, we thank you that you guide and direct us as we try to understand better the nature and properties of the seventh kingdom. Help us also to better understand our own humanity. The more we study your word, the better equipped we will be in being able to understand ourselves and to fight against those elements that are wrong within us. We ask for a blessing in Jesus' name. Thank you, everybody, for joining us online.